Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Junia Doan's The Spark. Thank you for joining us. Today I will be speaking with America's premier ragtime pianist, Bob Milne, who has been declared a national treasure by the Library of Congress. Welcome, Bob. Explain, what is ragtime? What makes ragtime ragtime?
Oh, Junia, that's a wonderful question. And the old phrase from the 1890s was, he plays in ragged time. And of course that got condensed to ragtime. What it means is the melodies are landing in between the beats. Now that doesn't make any sense to non-musicians. So it's called a syncopated music, where you have the left hand pounding, rhythm on the piano or on a string bass in the band, and as the left hand is playing like this, the right hand melodies are in between like this. So the melodies are in between the beats, and it's called a syncopation and ragtime.
Why do you think that developed that way? Because that was unusual, though it does have some history in classical Western composition.
It does. The classical Western compositions would utilize syncopation or ragged time, but nowhere near to the level of ragtime in this country. There's several theories, very strong theories, that the rhythms came from the Irish jig and from the Scottish reel. And you also said, why do you think it had developed? Well, from my own personal experience, I played for 25 years in places in Detroit. When I was younger, in the 60s, I played in loud saloons, and then I graduated into the seafood houses and quieter places. But what I learned during the saloon years was that you could hear the piano better if you spaced the parts apart like that. I learned that before I even knew what ragtime meant.
That's so, yeah. It's like the ear can't be bored. You can't have any dead space. Now, your interest was so great, you started a ragtime festival in Frankenmuth.
Oh, yes. That was over 25 years ago. It's held at Zender's. It was always in April. Of course, the shutdown of the last year and this year moved our dates. This year, it's scheduled for June 23 through 25, I believe. And
oh, I want to write that down. June 23rd to 25.
Yes, it's a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It is. Whatever, I think it's 23 through 25.
And how do you structure the festival? What happens?
Many years ago, the Zender's people asked me if they should have a ragtime festival, because there's festivals all over the country. So it worked out perfect. I said, I know all of the piano players. I can call them. All I got to do is call up my friends and get them over here. And you guys are the supreme advertisers and promoters. So they did that, and I called up my friends, and we would put on these 4-day festivals, Wednesday through Saturday, for 25 years straight. It became the most popular ragtime festival in America.
But has it changed over the 25 years, the structure of the festival and the emphasis?
No.
So people's tastes have not changed.
No, I tell all of the performers. See, of course, I know personally everyone who comes to the thing, And I tell them all, our purpose at this festival is for the audience to have fun. I don't want any sourpusses on the stage, no tales of woe about what happened to me, you know, that kind of thing. No, we're going to have fun on the stage. So the criteria to appear at the Frankenmuth Ragtime Festival is that you've got to be a very good musician, good piano player, and you've got to be loose and be able to have fun.
What makes fun for you? If it's got to be fun, what does that mean?
It means sharing anything I know with other people. I don't tell the down and outer stories. I like to just tell things that were very interesting and fun that happened in the ragtime era and that are still happening today.
I've thought about fun for myself because I try to make a lot of what I do fun for at least me. And partly it's a surprise, partly it's enthusiasm, probably it's just an eagerness, not to be present, but to be involved in some way and wait for the unexpected. And so I'm glad you do. Has the audience changed at all?
Well,
does it appeal to a different age group than it did at one time?
It did. Our audience is all older now. But back in the 60s, when I played in a German beer hall in Detroit called the Dakota Inn Rathskeller, which is still there and still going, that was my first professional job as a piano player. And everybody would sing. We'd sing the songs from 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. And everybody knew the words and they sang. And see, singing along has disappeared. I couldn't go into a place and get people to sing those songs today. They wouldn't know the words. And so in that regard, it changed drastically.
Has over the years your taste in ragtime changed?
No. No.
Now tell us a little bit about your background. Where were you born and go to school and trained?
Well, I was born in Ferndale, just north of Detroit. And in my elementary school down there, I lived in Ferndale through the end of the 6th grade. And we had a little school orchestra, which I joined the orchestra when I was in the 3rd grade, and I played the violin. I loved it. Then I moved to Rochester. I began the 7th grade there, and I was in that orchestra, violin. And by the start of the 8th grade, they abolished the orchestra. I don't know why. They shouldn't. And so I joined the band, and the band director handed me a French horn and says, "Here, play this thing." What's that? I said. So he told me, and I learned how to play it. And I heard recordings of the great orchestras and the great horn players in them. And I wanted to play like that guy. I said, that's wonderful. I want to do that. So when I was in the 10th grade, I'd only been playing the horn for 2 years. I was in the Pontiac Symphony, which was an offshoot of the Detroit Symphony. So here I was, 10th grade, in that. So, and I played in that 10th, 11th, 12th grades. I went to Interlochen. I was first horn up there. I went to the short section of two weeks. And then I went to the Eastman School of Music. I'd never heard of it. A friend of mine told me, "You ought to go to Eastman." So I auditioned and I was there. So I was there for 4 years. And when I was 19, I became assistant first horn in the Rochester Philharmonic, Rochester, New York. That was a huge symphony. Then I went to the Baltimore Symphony, and in the summer season, I was assistant first in that too. And then at the age of 22, I think it was 22, I quit playing the horn because it wasn't fun anymore. I was in a professional orchestra, and we were playing music I didn't like, and I quit after all of those years of being able to play the thing like a flute.
Why do you think it wasn't fun anymore?
A lot was because of the modern music that we played, which I hated it. It didn't have any melody to it. You couldn't sing it. I always noticed that the audiences would get up and leave when
Yeah.
we'd start playing that, and I'm wondering, why am I practicing an hour and a half every morning to play stuff like this? And so then I discovered that I was on the outs because the orchestra board is trying to raise funds, of course, and they're trying to premiere new and great, interesting musics. And here's me. I said, well, I just felt like an outsider, and I quit.
And so what happened next?
Well, I was in Baltimore, and all of my family lived in the Detroit area. So my cousin Bill Hall drove down to Baltimore and pulled me out of a pool hall and said, "Bob, you're going back to Detroit." So he hauled me back there, and him and another cousin of mine, they took me to the beer hall, the German beer hall, and Bill, my cousin, asked the manager if his little cousin could get up and play the piano. So I reluctantly did. Reluctantly, Bill actually picked me up and just put me on the piano stand. And I played 3 tunes and I quit, because I play everything by ear. Playing a piano is easy for me for some reason. So I was playing the sing-along songs that I'd heard. And so I played 3 and I got up to leave, and everyone wanted me to play more, so I played for an hour. And the place hired me. So there I was. Now I was a piano player 4 nights a week, Wednesday through Saturday. And somebody in the audience had asked me to play a certain tune, and I'd say, "I don't know it. How's it go? You guys sing it." So they did, and I'd play it in whatever key they were singing in, because I figured that's the key they wanted it in. So at any rate, then I played in the Rathskeller there for 9 years, I think. And then the seafood houses started picking me up, and I could play all kinds of things by then.
How did you have the stamina to play that long?
Oh, I used to play 8 hours a night. I used to play in what do they call cocktail lounges in hotels from 5 to 8, and then I'd go play in Charlie's Crab until 1 in the morning. And so it was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. I would play 8 hours a day, and then my wife and I would go to Greek Town. And we'd sit down there and have shish kebab and all lemon soup and all that wonderful stuff. Then we'd drive an hour and a half home to north of Lapeer, where we live, so we'd get home at 5. Of course, this is in the 70s, early 80s. And so then the next day I'd do it again, 7 nights a week.
I'm in awe. I'm in awe. You once said you were inspired and learned from a champion pool player.
Oh, yeah. I was actually a professional pool player when I was younger. My teacher was Irving Crane from Rochester, New York, and he was the world champion at the time. He was a gentleman. Always wore a suit and tie to play pool. And I wanted to play like him, and I learned a lot of things about moving the balls around. I was never a hustler. Hustlers play below their level to get other people to gamble. I was never a hustler. I played the game for the beauty of it and because it was fun.
And when you play the piano, I understand your fingers just hover. The minimal effort to play to conserve energy for these very long periods of playing. How does that work?
Well, when I first started, remember, I didn't take piano lessons. I play everything by gosh and by golly. I can hear tunes and remember them for some reason. And I always know what notes to hit. I've never practiced the piano a day in my life. And so when I was playing at the Rathskeller for 9 years, I didn't even have a piano at home. And so I would hear the tunes in my head, and I would play them on the steering wheel while I was driving around, just moving my fingers to the right spots. And I was teaching myself to coordinate my finger movements with what I heard in my head. So when I first started playing all of these hours at the Rathskeller, my hands would hurt the next day, and I'd be rubbing my hands and so forth. Then I suddenly remembered, hey, playing pool, what I learned from Irving Crane was to move that cue ball, move the balls as little as you possibly can. And it's called minimum motion, of course. So I said, okay, do the same thing with my hands. If I have to move this hand from here to over there, don't do one of these, just move it there. Straight, effortless, less motion. And I did, and same thing with my fingers. I play with piano sort of flat-fingered like that, and I would just move them this way, because doing this made my fingers hurt to the point where I couldn't move. So I just reduced everything to minimum motion, just moving my fingers this way, and if I had to go across the keyboard, go straight line, minimum effort. Both hands, minimum effort.
You must learn to be able to sense what the room is like. You played so many sort of piano bars and restaurants and private parties. How do you get that information? Are people impatient? Are they having a good time? What should you do after whatever it is you're playing?
Well, that's really a good question. And today I do the same thing. For instance, if I'm going to play a concert in some concert hall, people, the stagehands will say, Bob, what are you going to play? I don't know. I'm going to get out on the stage and I'm going to have a feeling about it, and whatever that is. And I did the same thing, as you mentioned, in the saloons and piano bars. Let's say that the Detroit Tigers had just won the World Championship, 1967. I walked into the Rathskeller that night, and I just played some real up-tempo tune, and everybody's yelling and screaming and cheering. And well, let's say that I was going to play the piano when John F. Kennedy got shot. No, you don't go in and do something like that. So I learned to play to the emotional feeling that I felt in the audience at the time.
Interesting. The fact that you can play piano without having to read the music or even learn to play is what they now call neurological synesthesia. How did they discover that?
I had never heard of the word synesthesia before they told me that I had it. A neuroscientist on the West Coast heard me playing in a very relaxed atmosphere, and over a period of summers, he would stand there and talk to me in this camp, and he'd ask me questions while I was playing, and I didn't know what he was doing. He told me later he would ask questions that I could not have rehearsed answers to. For instance, I'd be playing the piano, and he'd say, "Bob, did you hear about the crash on the San Francisco Bridge this morning?" I said, "Yes," and we'd be talking about details. See, that's something you can't rehearse. And he was trying to figure out if I had like compartments in the brain, and he'd have to explain this. I can't. And well, it turned out I did. So he put me in touch with the best student he'd ever had, a German girl named Kirsten, Dr. Kirsten Betterman, in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And she is still studying me 10 or 11 years later. And she did a whole series of tests on me to see what my thinking processes were. She had me in MRI machines, a total of 4.5 hours doing brain scans. She heard that I could hear multiple pieces at once in my head, and which is simple for me. I've always done it. But she would ask me, what do you hear? I said, well, I hear orchestras, I hear Nat King Cole, I hear anything I want to. So she studied that, discovered I could hear up to 4 of them at the same time. She ran a test on that. And to me, it was normal. My wife didn't even know that. See, what I'm describing here is the only way that I know how to play the piano or to do the things that I do. And I just hear them in my head, and then I try and get them into my fingers.
You know, it's such a gift, and I'm glad you use it with gratitude and respect. What is the role of, well, I think I'll start differently. For a while, you were drinking maybe too much alcohol. How did that come about?
Oh, you're right. I never wanted to get drunk. When I was younger, I thought, oh, this is a horrible thing. But then, as you see, I left the orchestras when I was 24, and I started playing pianos in bars in the Detroit area. And I'm still to this day deathly afraid of any hard liquor, whiskey, any of it. I've never touched it. At an early age, I realized it was going to figure out a way to kill me. So, but I didn't think beer, you could have a problem with it. Well, of course you can. I didn't know that, though. So I ended up drinking way too much beer, and by the time I was 32, I said, oh my goodness, this stuff is running me, and it's going to stop. August 15th, 1974, it stopped. Never looked back.
So many people who have talent are egotistical. What is the role of ego in you?
What is the role of, repeat that question, please?
Ego.
Ego. I don't have one. I don't think I'm good enough. I think I can play better than I can. And other people say, no, you can't. So, in fact, what I tell music students is I tell them, never try to show the audience how good you are, show them how good the music can be. There's a difference. We're not playing the piano to show anybody how good we are. I'm trying to keep the audience interested. It's not always fun. Sometimes you play something slow, and it'll create a sad emotion, and I mix these things up. But no, you can't. I know a lot of egotists. They're pretenders. You know, I've just never felt there's nothing to pretend about. Either play the piano or you don't.
You and your wonderful wife, Linda, have 2 children, 2 girls. What values or musical introductions did you bring to them? Because she's a pianist as well.
Yes, she is. Now, our daughters are actually my daughters from a previous marriage, but they are just very, very dear to Linda and to me, and vice versa. They are very, very talented in their own respects, but they don't go into the music end of it like I did. See, music is easy for me. That's why I do it. I've always said, you're so lazy, you're just doing this. See, but my girls, one became a psychologist, and another is a college professor over at the other side of Chicago. And we stay in very close touch with each other, and Linda stays in touch with them too.
You know, it strikes me that you're quite entrepreneurial because you have to generate these jobs as a pianist. And while they may be steady for a while, maybe they won't be. Do you think that independence was developed, or it goes back to your fun philosophy of life?
Well, we did develop all of these different jobs and concerts that I've done. And for 20 years, I was playing 250 performances a year. That's 5 a week, over 50 weeks. But I was playing 7, 8, 9 performances a week. I would be doing matinees. I would be doing a school performance in some town in Montana. I do a school performance, and that night I do a concert in the whatever concert hall they're in. And then we would get in our little motorhome immediately after the concert and drive 200 miles in the direction of the next one, which is going to be in Seattle or somewhere the next night. And we developed that. And when I first started doing this, many of these places were calling me up and say, hey, we just heard you played at Montana or whatever, and can you play at our place? And I'd say, well, where are you? I'm going to be going by your place in August, and I can come in on Thursday night. Okay. So I had a phone bill this thick for many years. This was before the computers. Even auditing agencies were saying, Bob, how can you make, this is 1 month. This is 1 month of paperwork. And I'd say, well, there they are, and I called them all, and you'll see that I played piano at most of them. And so I was making phone calls constantly, and then the internet made it easier.
Did Linda go with you, or were you driving by yourself?
Oh no, she went everywhere with me, everywhere. I wouldn't go anywhere without her. And then for many years I was a music ambassador for the U.S., and we went to Japan, I think 5 different times. And so the embassy was saying, well, Bob, we're not going to pay for Linda's plane ticket. I said, I don't care, I'll pay for it, but she's going with me. So she went everywhere.
Thank you so very much, Bob. Really appreciate it. I'd like to say a few words. First of all, his philosophy of life is fun. He has a gift that he respects. He adores his wife, and be careful who you marry, everybody. It's a very important decision in your life. And he brings joy and great mental acuity about history of music, but a lot of other fields. So remember, go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know, and do it every day. People need that, and a big smile. And I'll see you next week. Thank you, Bob, and thank you everyone for tuning in again. Have a good week.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadonesthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadonesthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.